A woman isn't complete until she's had a child. That's why my wife is only half a person. At a family gathering, my husband Lucas, clearly intoxicated, started belittling me loudly. His cruel words were directed at me, who couldn't have children and had adopted, and I had lost every bit of affection for him. He wasn't just targeting me, he was also making life miserable for our son, Noah. I couldn't allow this man's tyranny to continue any longer. I resolved to reveal a certain fact I had kept hidden to bring Lucas to justice. My name is Olivia. I married Lucas, my college classmate, while we were students, and now I'm a housewife. Lucas works at his father's small company. Therefore, I often interact with my parents-in-law, Alexander and Isabella. Since our marriage, they have persistently nagged us. Olivia, when will we see our grandchild? We're looking forward to the future heir of our company. It should be a boy first. Their constant badgering about children was overwhelming. Although I wanted children someday, Lucas often went out drinking to relieve work stress. He frequently came home just to sleep, sometimes not returning until morning. Our sex life was practically non-existent, so no matter how much my in-laws pressured us, we couldn't have children. Lucas, Alexander, and Isabella keep asking about an heir. Can't you spend more time with me? Don't worry about them. I'll handle it. I'm too busy with work to think about anything else. Whenever I tried to discuss it with him, he brushed it off, making it impossible to resolve anything. One day, during lunch with my visiting in-laws, the topic of an heir came up again. You two really need to think seriously about having children. Actually, could you not talk about it? We haven't mentioned this, but the reason we don't have children is because of Olivia's health issues. I was stunned by his unexpected words. What do you mean by that? I told you I'd handle it. The reason we didn't have children was because Lucas was never home due to his constant partying. I couldn't believe he was blatantly lying to our in-laws, blaming me for our childlessness. Is that so? You should have told us earlier. Despite my feelings, the conversation continued. Even though Lucas's story was fabricated, it might stop the constant badgering about children. Despite my anger, I remained silent. Still, an heir is necessary. How about adopting a child? Alexander's surprising suggestion caught me off guard. I had considered adoption. Even when I suggested trying for a baby, Lucas always avoided the tests and anything inconvenient. Given his behavior, having a child naturally seemed impossible. Even for a small company, Lucas was the next president, and an heir was necessary. So, the idea of adoption didn't seem so bad. More than that, I also wanted a child, even if we weren't related by blood. Ever since I was young, I loved children, and I always dreamed of showering my own child with love. Encouraged by Alexander and others, Lucas became enthusiastic about the idea, and with my agreement, we decided to adopt a child through the foster care system. Mom, I'm hungry. What's for snack today? All right, I'm preparing it. Go wash your hands first. Okay. The boy who came back from elementary school full of energy was Noah, the boy we adopted. He quickly adjusted to living with us, and now we live like a real family. Although my relationship with Lucas remained cold and distant, I was happy to pour my love into Noah instead. My son grew up without any problems and developed into a fine young man with a straight and honest character. When Noah was in high school, Isabella fell ill, and we had to take care of her at home. I'm worried about Grandma, so I'll help out as much as I can. Noah suggested this to me while I was commuting to Isabella's house and relying on a nursing facility for assistance. You can't do that with school. I'll take care of Grandma, so you focus on your studies. I'll study properly and won't overdo it. I just want to help reduce your burden a bit. Is that okay? Wanting to support each other as a family, I asked Noah to help as much as his studies allowed. So Noah started going to Isabella's house after school and actively helped with her care. It wasn't just out of a sense of duty, he genuinely cared about Isabella. I always thought he was a kind-hearted boy, but he willingly did the dirty work and enjoyed taking care of his grandmother. My parents-in-law also doted on Noah as if he were their own grandson. Thanks to our care, Isabella's condition improved, and she could take care of herself to some extent. I'm so glad Grandma is feeling better. Noah rejoiced with us. When Noah was in 11th grade and we talked about his future plans, he confided that he wanted to become a caregiver, likely influenced by his experience with Isabella. When I helped Grandma, I realized I wanted to study welfare in college and help elderly people recover. I was surprised by his words, but thought it was typical of kind-hearted Noah. All right. Mom supports your dream. When we told my parents-in-law, they were impressed and praised him. However, there was one person who opposed Noah's career choice. It was Lucas. I won't allow you to become a caregiver. It's not a profitable job. We adopted you to be the successor of our company. I appreciate that you took me in when I had no one. But I want to choose my own career. Noah, who usually never defied Lucas, stood his ground this time, showing how determined he was. Do whatever you want. I'm not paying for your tuition. Unhappy that things didn't go his way, the relationship between Lucas and Noah became strained. Lucas refused to provide any financial support for Noah's plan to attend a welfare-oriented university. When we were at a loss, wondering what to do, my parents-in-law offered their help. It's our precious grandchild's future at stake, so please let us support him. And what about Lucas? He barely helped with raising the kids or caring for us, just talks big. I'm ashamed to call him my son. Both of them seemed utterly exasperated with their son's attitude. Noah successfully graduated from college and obtained his certification as a caregiver, just as he had hoped. With his graduation and new job, Noah moved out of our home and started living on his own. While I felt a bit lonely seeing him leave, I was also very proud of him for working in a job that helps others. The work was tough, but it seemed to be rewarding, and he was thriving. One day, Noah contacted me, saying he had something to discuss. When I asked for details, he said he wanted to introduce his fiancée. I made sure Lucas, who rarely comes home, was present this time. As we waited for Noah and his fiancée to arrive, Noah walked in with a woman by his side. This is Emily. We've been dating for a while now. Nice to meet you. The woman greeted me. Emily was a singer-songwriter. Noah had fallen in love with her at first sight when she visited his care facility to perform, and they eventually started dating. My first impression of her was that she seemed gentle and kind. I guessed Noah was attracted to those qualities. Emily, as a singer-songwriter, what kind of songs do you sing? What genres do you like? I was surprised to see Lucas asking Emily so many questions. Lucas, who usually doesn't talk much, seemed unusually chatty. Despite my curiosity, the conversation flowed smoothly, and Noah mentioned they were considering marriage. Lucas and I had no objections and gave them our blessings. A few months later, they got married and held a wedding ceremony. Naturally, my parents-in-law attended and were genuinely happy for their grandson. You married well. That's my son. Lucas and Noah had been on bad terms since Noah's high school days, but on the wedding day, Lucas praised Noah. Perhaps age had mellowed him out a bit. After the wedding, Noah and Emily decided to live with us temporarily to save up for their own home. I was happy to have him back home, and Emily didn't seem to mind living with us, which was rare for young people these days. About 3 months after the wedding, Emily's pregnancy was discovered. Knowing it was her first pregnancy and that she might be anxious, I tried to support her by accompanying her to the hospital and such. Unlike you, Emily is capable of having children. One day, Lucas, who had come home drunk, insulted me. I usually ignored his verbal abuse to avoid arguments, but this time I couldn't let it slide. What do you mean by that? You've been blaming me in front of Alexander and others, but isn't it because you stopped coming home? If you were more attractive as a woman, I would have come home. It's your fault, I retorted, but Lucas didn't change his stance, insisting it was my fault. You really can't do anything right. You should learn from Emily. He continued to insult me and praise Emily more and more frequently. Strangely enough, I often saw Lucas visiting Emily's room. I confronted him, saying it was inappropriate to visit his daughter-in-law's room so often, lacking any sense of delicacy. He brazenly retorted that it was only natural for a father-in-law to care for his pregnant daughter-in-law. However, ever since we adopted young Noah, Lucas had always maintained that child-rearing was a woman's job, insisting he neither understood nor intended to help. His sudden change in attitude seemed extremely unnatural. Regularly comparing Emily and me with insulting remarks, my resentment and distrust toward Lucas grew. Meanwhile, Emily's belly kept growing, and she safely delivered a healthy baby boy. About a month after the birth, when things had calmed down, we decided to host a family dinner to celebrate Emily and her new baby. Women only become complete once they give birth. Among the gathered relatives, Lucas, perhaps drunk, suddenly began loudly praising Emily. Hearing his words, Emily, holding the newborn, smiled proudly. So my wife remains incomplete. She acts all high and mighty for raising an adopted child, but she never actually gave birth. Compared to her, Emily is far superior for giving us a son. Dad. That's no way to speak. Mom raised me into who I am today. Apologize. It's the truth. Enough, Noah. It's useless to reason with him. He's never considered anyone else's feelings. You're mocking me too. Yes, I think you're a fool. You're truly an irredeemable person. All the pent-up anger within me began to surge. Annoyed by my strong retort, Lucas spat insults at me, spraying saliva. If you were as gentle and supportive as Emily. At that moment, startled by our shouting, the baby Emily was holding began to cry loudly. Despite the tense atmosphere, Emily kept her usual calm smile, which appeared eerie. The baby's crying. Maybe Dad should hold him, she said, trying to hand the baby to Noah beside her. Just as Noah was about to take the baby, I steeled myself and addressed everyone present. Wait, that baby isn't yours, Noah. Right, Emily? When I asked Emily, she remained silent, her face expressionless. Mom, what do you mean? Just what I said. That baby isn't Noah's. What? Then whose baby is it? I looked straight at the man who had been hurling insults at me. Lucas, it's your child, isn't it? I firmly questioned, and Lucas suddenly became speechless. What are you talking about? Don't make baseless accusations. It's not a lie. I investigated thoroughly. You barely spent time at home, but after Emily arrived, you were home frequently. Sneaking into her room often, I found it suspicious. Unable to leave their suspicious behavior unchecked, I secretly investigated their relationship. Lucas, not expecting my suspicion, hadn't bothered to destroy evidence. In his room, I found hotel receipts. The dates matched the days when both Noah and I were away. You might have set this up to trap me. I don't know anything about this. Are you still pretending? The history on your car navigation system matches the hotel address perfectly. You can't talk your way out of this anymore, can you? That's still just circumstantial evidence. I have more. Hey, Emily, remember when you said you were going to a cafe with your friends? I had let her go without any suspicion at the time, but upon investigation, I discovered it was a complete lie. I checked your social media posts. Look at this picture. It seems like you're having tea at a cafe, but there's something else in the picture. It's hard to notice at first, but in the corner of the photo featuring cake and coffee, a particular watch is visible. Lucas, you recognize it, don't you? How do you explain that the same watch you're wearing on your left wrist is in this photo? Lucas knew he couldn't deny it. His face turned pale at my words. This watch was a custom-made, one-of-a-kind gift I had given Lucas for his birthday. And there's more. Listen to this recording. I pulled a voice recorder from my bag and pressed play. The voices of Lucas and Emily filled the room. It's best to have a child with your own blood. This way, we can ensure the succession and stability of the company. But won't Olivia and Noah notice? Those fools won't have a clue about our relationship. Just relax and have my child. The vile conversation made me feel sick. I had hired a private investigator to monitor them, and this was the recorded audio. Do you still want to make excuses? Lucas hung his head in silence. He never imagined I would go this far. You caught us. In stark contrast to Lucas, Emily brazenly confessed. I don't mind being exposed. I hinted at it on social media, but I never thought Olivia would figure it out before Noah. You are really clueless. This is insane. Why would you do such a thing? It was fine while we were dating, but after marriage, being a caregiver just felt underpaid and dull. You should have taken over the company as you were meant to. Even so, having an affair with my father is unacceptable. Noah couldn't hide his bewilderment at Emily's unapologetic demeanor. Lucas approached me first. Olivia is completely middle-aged now. He prefers someone younger like me. Hey, wait a minute. There's no need to reveal everything. Lucas tried to stop her. Everything's already out in the open, so why not? But Emily laughed. She continued. Lucas was the one who said he had no love for Olivia or Noah and planned to kick them out eventually. So, I thought why not have his child and become the wife of the president of a small company? Do you think you can get away with this? Your mom is just a housewife, and Noah has nothing to do with the company. What authority do you have to hold me accountable? Alexander will pay the alimony, so why don't you both leave quickly? That's right. Now that we have an heir, you're no longer needed. Olivia, I'm divorcing you and marrying Emily. Lucas, realizing that there was no point in making any more excuses, joined Emily in demanding a divorce from me. As Lucas and Emily declared this triumphantly, someone who had been quietly observing the situation spoke up. Have you two lost your minds? Who said I would let anyone who deceived my son's wife and grandson take over the company? Alexander shouted angrily, his face stern. What are you talking about, Dad? Of course, you'd prefer my biological child over Noah, who isn't even blood related. That's where you're wrong. I'm planning to shut down the company in my generation. What heir? What bloodline? It's all nonsense you're spouting. What do you mean, shut down the company? This wasn't the plan. Emily, who had been smiling confidently, now screamed hysterically. Did you think I wouldn't notice that you're a lazy, useless worker? I wouldn't mind handing the company over to Noah, but I won't keep it at the cost of ruining my grandson's dreams. According to Alexander, Lucas had been neglecting his work, relying on his status as the owner's son. Seeing this attitude, he had decided to close the company during his tenure. How could you make such a decision without telling me? That's so heartless. What are you saying? If you had worked diligently and cared for your family, this wouldn't have happened. It's all your own doing. Severely reprimanded by Alexander, Lucas fell silent, unable to say anything more. Emily, too, was in shock, unable to believe how things had turned out. They both left the scene hastily, unable to bear the cold stares from the other relatives. Later, all of Lucas's schemes were exposed, leading to his dismissal from the company. Of course, I kicked both Lucas and Emily out of our house, but they never apologized to us, not even once. I heard from others that Lucas struggled to find a new job because he lacked significant work experience or qualifications, and he ended up doing temporary labor. Their 2 children were left with Emily's parents, while Emily herself took up night work. It's said that the relationship between Lucas and Emily has become strained, and divorce seems imminent. Even after divorcing Lucas, I maintained a relationship with my in-laws. They apologized for pressuring me to have an heir during that ordeal. But thanks to that, Noah became my wonderful son, so it worked out well in the end. When I said this cheerfully, they nodded with tears in their eyes, agreeing wholeheartedly. I thought Noah would be down for a while after that incident, but he's a strong kid, so I'm not too worried. One day, he'll find someone he can truly trust. There may be no blood ties between me, my in-laws, and Noah. But we are family, and will continue to support each other. I have Warren's baby in my belly. 3 months before the wedding, my sister Zoe, who was being held by my fiancé, makes a terrifying confession. I look up at the sky, feeling a sense of inevitability. After all, my sister Zoe is a homewrecker who always wants what others have and doesn't hesitate to take it. In my family, it's been decided that Zoe and Warren would get married, and I have no choice but to accept it. My entire family is so crazy, it's driving me insane. I am Valerie. I'm a 30-year-old jogging enthusiast and a sports instructor. I've loved exercising since I was a child, and I feel that my current job, teaching what I love, is my calling. Before work or on my days off, I always jog along the levee, so my skin is tanned year-round. I prioritize comfort over fashion, tying my hair in a ponytail and wearing only a ring on my left finger. The ring was given to me by my fiancé Warren when he proposed last month. Warren, who is the same age as me, was a high school classmate, and we reconnected after becoming adults. His parents run a well-known local company, and Warren is their successor. People around me envy that I'm marrying into money, but for an ordinary person like me, it's just pressure. However, when I first met his parents at a family meeting, they were very kind and genuinely happy that I would become Warren's wife. I was relieved to have such good people as relatives. Now, we were going to have a family meeting at my parents' house. Valerie, your fiancé will be coming, and Zoe will be joining us too. What? The day before the family meeting, while helping my mom clean the house, she drops this bombshell. Wasn't Zoe supposed to be at work? She took the day off because she wanted to meet your fiancé. She really loves you, Valerie. Ha ha ha. I could only manage a strained smile at my mom's clueless words. Zoe is 3 years younger than me. She is the person I find the most difficult to deal with in this world. Unlike me, Zoe is stylish and charming. But her personality is the problem. Zoe has always wanted what others have since she was a child. I, being the closest target, bore the brunt of this. Since she was about 3, Zoe has always wanted my things. Whenever I got new clothes or toys, she'd cry, saying she wanted them too. My parents would say, "You're the big sister, so you should let Zoe have it." And they would give my things to her. I would get secondhand or just suitable replacements. Even the pencil case and study desk I got for school were taken by her, who had just started kindergarten. The backpack didn't become hers because I was told there would be cuter ones in 3 years, but she was given a cute kids brand bag instead. She seems to enjoy the chase. Once she gets what she wants, she loses interest quickly. My parents, looking troubled, would say, "We just bought that." But they never scolded her. I did my homework at the table, turning my back on the unused study desk. Her habit of taking what she wanted extended to kindergarten and school. Even when called in for trouble, my parents always took her side. Eventually, she started taking boys from other girls. By the time she was in middle school, she was known among the girls as a homewrecker. Some girls confronted her, but many boys sided with her, and most girls gave up. Even as her sister, I can see that Zoe is a kind of genius. She is a master at creating villains and timing her tears perfectly. She used her tears to manipulate our parents and boys, getting everything she wanted in life. I went to a university far away, too far to commute from home. It was all to get away from my devilish sister, Zoe. I got a job at a national sports gym in the state where my university was located. It was at this gym that I ran into Warren, my high school classmate. We felt it was fate to meet again in such a place. Warren was studying at a different company from his family's business, planning to return home and take over when he turned 30. Honestly, I didn't want to go back to my hometown with Zoe there, and the idea of becoming the company president's wife was daunting. So, when Warren proposed, I hesitated a lot but eventually decided to be with him. If I'm 30, Zoe is 27. She's an adult now, so she should have outgrown her childish desire to take what others have. I believed that and decided to return to my hometown when I got married. Even so, I couldn't shake the anxiety about having Zoe and Warren meet. And then, on the day of the family meeting, Valerie. Zoe. Zoe, with her long, beautiful black hair and white dress flowing, hugged me tightly. I hadn't seen her much since I graduated from high school, and I was taken aback by her unchanged, girlish charm and sweet scent. "Oh, Valerie. If you had a boyfriend, you should have introduced him to me sooner." "Sorry." "Valerie's boyfriend, nice to meet you, I'm her sister Zoe." "Oh, I'm Warren. I'm so happy to have a big brother for the first time." "Nice to meet you, Warren." I heard Warren swallow nervously as Zoe smiled softly. It was stupid of me to introduce them. Zoe's personality hadn't changed at all. I had a bad feeling about this. And that bad feeling came true immediately. "Sorry, Valerie. I'm pregnant with Warren's baby." 1 year after the proposal, and just 3 months before the wedding, Zoe made this horrifying confession. Of course, I was surprised, but not shocked. Of course not. Zoe wouldn't let a guy like Warren, the heir to a well-known local company and quite good-looking, slip through her fingers. It was all my fault. As I was crushed by despair, Zoe looked at me with her big, moist eyes. "Sorry, Valerie. I know Warren is your fiancé, but I couldn't stop my feelings for him." Sigh. "Wait. You aren't at fault. The one who sinned is me for falling in love with you." Warren. As the two gazed at each other dreamily, all I could do was sigh. I was more composed than I expected, but Warren found it strange. "What's wrong? Are you so shocked you can't speak?" "Yeah, something like that." But the shock I felt was more about my foolishness in trusting Zoe than losing Warren. My attitude seemed to annoy Warren, who frowned openly. You're really not cute, even at times like this. A normal person would cling and beg, "Don't leave me." What? That's why I hated the idea of marrying you. I only proposed because I thought I had to take responsibility after dating you until we were 30. What? No, no, who was the one who proposed to me with tears in his eyes at that beautiful park? Who was the one who desperately convinced me when I hesitated to return to my hometown? Warren is too responsible. You should care more about your own feelings. Zoe gently touched his arm. Warren, satisfied, took Zoe's hand. See, Zoe understands my feelings. Compared to you. What? Sure, I may not be as charming as Zoe, but I never neglected Warren. And you, Warren, said you liked our straightforward relationship. This is all her fault. While whispering sweet words, she must have turned my memories with Warren into something negative. Even as my sister, she's terrifying. She also had a hard time being stalked by a guy. Yes, if it weren't for Warren, Yes, yes, the usual story of Zoe making her ex-boyfriends out to be villains. Even after more than 10 years, Zoe's tactics hadn't changed. Oh, I can't. I don't have the charm or strength to win him back now. The two of them left the room together, as if to show off to me. They must have gone to report to my parents. When they heard Zoe was pregnant, they were surprised but quickly accepted my broken engagement and their marriage. In the end, Zoe was more precious to them than I was. It's your fault for not being able to satisfy him, Valerie. Zoe and the baby are pitiful, so let them have him. My parents' words, which seemed to blame me rather than comfort me, made my heart grow cold. Behind them, she smiled triumphantly, which finally made me angry. What about the wedding? We've already sent out the invitations and there will be cancellation fees. Don't worry, I'll take your place as the bride, Valerie. What? What is this girl talking about? Because there's no better venue around here than the one you chose, and since I'm 3 months pregnant, it's perfect timing. We need to save extra money for the baby, right? What is this girl really saying? Zoe, you're such a good person. What is this man talking about? As expected of Zoe. We don't have to resend the invitations to the relatives. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Oh, Valerie, make sure to notify your friends and workplace about the cancellation. We're inviting Zoe's friends instead. What is this mom talking about? There are only unreasonable people here. They were already moving forward with Zoe and Warren's wedding, completely ignoring my feelings. Everyone is so crazy, it's driving me insane. Valerie, I'm sorry. I'm going to be happy first. Zoe tilted her head with tearful eyes, making me feel nauseous. I felt bitter and miserable, but I had no allies, and Zoe already had a life growing inside her. I had no choice but to accept their marriage. Still, I didn't wish them happiness. Just because we're family doesn't mean I'll forgive them. They were the ones who discarded me first. After that, I informed my friends and workplace about the broken engagement as Mom instructed. Everyone was shocked and concerned that the wedding was called off just before it was supposed to happen, but when they heard it was because of Zoe and my ex-fiancé's shotgun marriage, they were appalled. They were speechless when they found out the bride was being replaced. My boss at work quickly canceled my transfer back to my hometown and promised to assign me to a nearby branch of the gym. My friends were furious on my behalf and suggested we go on a trip once things settled down. I might not have been blessed with a good family or fiancé, but I was fortunate to have supportive people around me. I took care of informing other important parties about the broken engagement and completed all my necessary tasks. Then, the wedding day arrived. Of course, I wasn't allowed to attend, not that I wanted to anyway. I spent the day loading the belongings I had already moved into what was supposed to be our new apartment onto my friend's truck. Apparently, Warren and Zoe were going to live there starting tomorrow. Although I had been able to return to my previous state, I had already notified my old apartment of my move-out date, so I struggled to find a new place. I was relieved to find that I could move today when my smartphone rang. As soon as I answered, I heard Mom yelling, "Valerie! Get to the venue now!" What? But I was told not to attend. Just come! With Mom's overwhelming pressure, I reluctantly agreed. I had expected to be called anyway. Glancing at the clock, it was just before 3 p.m. It was probably the time between the ceremony and the reception. I put on the formal dress I had prepared just in case and headed to the venue in my friend's truck. When I entered the reception hall, guided by the staff, I saw that the number of attendees was less than half of the 80-person capacity. Most of the bride's side were relatives, while the groom's side had only the groom's parents and a few friends. There was only one woman sitting on the bride's side. Moreover, that woman was wearing a pure white dress reminiscent of a bride's and drinking red wine. Warren's face was pale, and Zoe next to him looked extremely unhappy. When Mom saw me, she strode over with big steps. "Valerie! Explain to everyone." "What?" "Explain what?" "Explain that this wedding is amicable. Our relatives are suspicious, and none of the groom's relatives are here." I could only think that it was obvious. I didn't know how they explained the bride change from sister to sister, but with the groom's name being the same, anyone would be suspicious. This will ruin Zoe's wedding. Please do something. Pushed by the panicked Mom, I was dragged to stand next to Warren. I reluctantly took the microphone from the bewildered staff and began to speak. "Warren, Zoe, congratulations on your wedding. As the bride's sister, I wish you both happiness. Valerie." Warren's eyes moistened, and Zoe smiled contentedly. What do these people think of me? As if a sister who had her fiancé stolen by her sister would bless them. What? Ignoring the dumbfounded bride and groom, I faced the attendees. "As you can imagine, my fiancé Warren fell in love with my sister Zoe and got her pregnant. The bride and groom, as well as my parents, insulted me, saying I lacked feminine charm and unilaterally broke off the engagement. They told me not to attend the wedding, but as soon as they realized it was inconvenient for them, here we are. Mom wants me to explain that this wedding is amicable, but how can it be when Zoe stole my fiancé?" "Valerie." Mom glared at me with a red face. Warren was sweating coldly, and Zoe looked at me with a blank expression. Then, applause came from one of the tables. It was the woman in a white dress who had attended as a friend of the bride. She stood up and walked over to me, her high heels clicking. The strong smell of alcohol made me wrinkle my nose. "Valerie, can I make a speech too?" "Go ahead." Having no particular reason to refuse, I handed her the microphone, and she smiled brightly and began to speak. I'm Adele, Zoe's friend. Sorry for being so drunk. Zoe, congratulations on your wedding. By the way, the groom is, Zach, right?" "What?" Warren was surprised to be called by an unfamiliar name. "Oh, no? Sorry, Zach was my college ex-boyfriend. Zoe took him from me. If it's not Zach, then Alan? Baden? Marcus? Hank? Edwin? Newton? What? With each name Adele mentioned, Not only Warren but the entire venue began to stir. Adele, unfazed, turned to Zoe. "Remember? These are all the men you took from others. There were more, but I can't remember them all. There were about 30, after all." The murmurs in the venue grew louder. I was shocked at the sheer number, but given her nature, it made sense. Zoe glared at Adele for a moment, but quickly switched to her signature tearful expression. "Valerie and Adele are being so cruel. I'm not that kind of girl." "Right, Warren?" Oh, yeah. The reason I chose Zoe over Valerie is because Valerie was horrible to me." "So you're admitting in front of everyone that you left me for Zoe?" "Oh." Warren's face showed he realized his mistake. Zoe also froze, but quickly tried to turn Adele and me into the villains, as she had done with so many others. "It's true Warren was engaged to Valerie. But Valerie was cold to him, so I just comforted him." Adele snorted in amusement. Sure. Making the ex-boyfriends and their girlfriends the villains to snag the guy is your usual tactic. I've never done anything so terrible. Then why am I the only one sitting in the bride's friends section? Teach that. And is the baby in your belly really Warren's? What? You were dating Alan until 5 months ago, weren't you? What? Warren looked at Zoe in shock. Adele, with surprisingly steady steps for someone drunk, left the venue and returned with a young man. "Zoe!" "You." Zoe's face finally changed when she saw the sad-looking young man. "Why, you're that stalker who imagined he was dating Zoe." Warren stood up, eyes glaring, but Adele snorted again. "Oh, so that's the story." "No, this man is Zoe's boyfriend, and my friend's ex-Zoe took him just like she took you from Valerie." "What?" Warren's voice was full of disbelief. "So, do you think the baby's father is the groom? What do you think, Valerie?" Adele asked me cheerfully. I thought for a moment before replying with a troubled expression. "I don't know. There might be other candidates." "That's possible." Adele laughed heartily, finding my response hilarious. The venue, unable to keep up with the unfolding drama, and my parents were stunned. Feeling sorry for the attendees who got dragged into this, I apologized deeply. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply sorry for showing you such an ugly scene today. I will now take my leave." "Wait, Valerie." "Goodbye, Warren. I'll be sending you the bill for the divorce settlement later." "What?" "You can't escape. I've already talked to your parents." "What?" Warren looked back sharply at the rear seats. He seemed to have finally remembered the presence of his parents, who had been glaring at him since the party began. Yes, after the engagement was broken, I made sure to meet with Warren's parents-in-law. Embarrassed but honest, I explained everything, and they were furious on my behalf. I had become close with Warren's mom after the wedding introduction, going shopping together, and discussing party plans and dress consultations. Warren seemed to have forgotten all of this and naively thought his parents wouldn't care if he broke off our engagement and switched to Zoe. Of course, his parents were neither unreasonable nor heartless. Disappointed in their son's behavior, they had already arranged for relatives and business associates not to attend the wedding. Given the disgrace their son showed at the wedding, they were probably relieved not to have invited any family. With the bride's sister and a friend exposing her misdeeds, and an ex-boyfriend who might be the baby's father appearing, the wedding was in chaos. The staff and the MC were huddled in the corner, trying to figure out what to do. Not wanting to cause any more trouble, I left quickly. Adele followed me out. We silently high-fived and then went our separate ways. I got into my friend's truck, which was waiting for me in the parking lot, and headed back to the apartment to load the rest of my things before driving to my new apartment. With my smartphone constantly buzzing, I turned it off. Feeling refreshed, I left my hometown. The wedding, unable to recover, was cancelled. Warren and Alan, one of Zoe's ex-boyfriends, questioned her about the baby's father, but Zoe insisted it was Warren's. Dad, shocked by his sweet daughter's promiscuous life, had a severe blood pressure spike and was hospitalized. Mom, despite being shocked, remained on Zoe's side and cursed me like I was the devil when I came with a lawyer to demand divorce settlement money. Ignoring their mess, I collected the divorce settlement money I was entitled to. I spent the money on a trip with the friends who supported me and saved the rest. I started living a peaceful life in a place where Zoe and my parents couldn't interfere. For me, everything was resolved, but it seemed it wasn't the case for them. A year after the wedding debacle, Warren showed up at my workplace as I was about to leave. I hadn't told him where I worked, but he must have found me through the company's instructor profile. We were all deceived. As soon as he saw me, Warren shouted, "The child that woman had wasn't mine. She's a witch who tore us apart." I had already heard from Mom's one-sided phone call, but it seemed the baby's father was Alan, not Warren. Well, that must have been tough. My words made Warren's eyes fill with tears. "Valerie, it was you who truly loved me all along. I'll leave that devil. Let's start over here from scratch. We can overcome any hardship together." Warren. Warren gently took my hand. I slapped his hand away forcefully. "Are you crazy? What? There is no way I would get back together with you." "Why not? I was just deceived by that woman. Don't act like a victim. Even if Zoe deceived you, it doesn't erase the fact that you hurt me." "But..." "And you're the only one facing difficulties. I heard your brother took over the heir position." Ugh. The truth was, in the chaos of the wedding, Warren's parents labeled him as a failure and removed him from the line of succession. Their decision that a man who is unfaithful to his future wife cannot run a business faithfully was completely sound. He had quit his job to become the heir, and now he was unemployed. Rejected by his former workplace, he was in the middle of a job search. Unlike you, I'm not struggling with anything. There's no benefit in getting back together with you, and I don't have a shred of affection left. Benefit? That's why you got dumped, because you're so calculating. Sure, and clinging to the woman you dumped isn't calculating? Gore. Unable to counter my argument, Warren turned red and groaned. At that moment, my coworkers noticed our argument and gathered around. "Oh, is this the guy? The one who got tricked by that man-eater Zoe and ended up jobless?" "Yeah, that's him." "What do you want with Valerie now? Don't you have any pride? If you mess with Valerie, these muscles won't stay silent." Surrounded by muscular, towering men, Warren screamed and fled. He showed up at work a few more times, but thanks to my coworker's solid guard, he seemed to give up. 3 years later, just when I thought I was done with relationships, I met a man who was incredibly compatible with me, and we got married. He liked jogging too, and we met while jogging in the park early in the morning. After we started dating, I learned he ran a company. Warren's betrayal had left me traumatized, and I hesitated. Around that time, Zoe's divorce from Warren was finally finalized, and she showed up in front of me. Of course, I no longer considered her my sister. There was no way I would let this homewrecker near my precious partner. But somehow, she found out and appeared when we were out shopping and having tea. "Hey! Valerie, long time no see," in her usual manner. And naturally, she showed immense interest in my partner and aggressively flirted with him. Oh, am I never going to be free from this monster? But this time, it was different. He brushed off Zoe's hands that were all over him. And he said, "That's disgusting. You really do want any man who belongs to someone else, don't you? I've never seen someone like that. I can't believe you seduced men with such vulgar behavior. Just looking at you makes me sick." Feeling reassured by his confident demeanor, I decided to marry him. As for Zoe after the divorce, she never married Alan, the real father of her child. Alan, finally waking up from her spell during the wedding chaos, realized she was a terrible woman. After being harshly rejected by my partner and having her pride as a woman shattered, Zoe went on to pursue other men and had affairs with several married men. But her infidelity was quickly discovered by their wives, and she was sued for compensation from many families. Naturally, Mom came crying to me, but I didn't help. Zoe worked tirelessly to repay her debts, and her once proud skin and hair became ruined. Looking more than 10 years older than her age, no man would be deceived by her anymore. Meanwhile, her child was taken in by Alan's parents and lived comfortably. I'm glad the child didn't end up in a sad situation. Years later, while raising my kids, I still work at the sports gym. Even though my husband's income is more than enough, I love my job. I also help out as the company president's wife, but it's not too burdensome. I even have the leisure to jog with my husband and kids on weekend mornings. "Teacher, you always look so young. How do you stay so beautiful?" An elderly gym member asked me enviously. "Because I get to do what I love and have a family that supports me." I felt a little embarrassed and laughed. I didn't have the best family or sister and faced many challenges in life. But meeting a husband who accepts my personality and way of life made it all worth it. All's well that ends well. Today, as always, I'm enjoying my active life with a protein shake made by Bert. In the dark bedroom, the intense cries of the baby echoed. "What's wrong, Susan? Are you hungry? Karen, did you wake up too?" Just when one falls asleep, the other wakes up. When both are awake, they both demand to be held. Since giving birth to the twins, there hasn't been a moment to sleep, and both William and I have been growing more and more exhausted. One morning, the sound of the intercom prompted me to open the front door with sunken eyes. There stood two unexpected visitors. "Looking gloomy so early in the morning. You're making us feel miserable too." "We're here because you haven't brought the grandchildren over." Standing there bathed in the morning sunlight were my mother-in-law, Mary, and sister-in-law, Elizabeth, both looking displeased. I am Linda. I'm a petite 36-year-old, not even 5 feet tall. My husband, William, is 2 years younger and works as a businessman. My in-laws run a well-known local company. William is a giant at almost 6 feet, and both his parents and Elizabeth are over 5 feet 7 inches. So when I visit the in-laws' home, I feel like a dwarf. The kitchen is also designed for Mary, who is 5 feet 8 inches, so I can't help much. Mary and Elizabeth don't like me running around without really accomplishing anything. They always dismiss me with cold words like, "You're in the way, just sit down." I want to get along with William's family, but I feel ashamed and frustrated for being useless. Even so, as long as I can endure the visits during holidays, the in-laws don't actively interfere with us. William is gentle and kind, making our married life peaceful. But everything changed when I got pregnant with twins. Twin pregnancies are said to put a great strain on the mother's body. On top of that, I was considered an older mother, petite, and with existing health issues, making it very risky, and the obstetrician was concerned. "They might not survive. The mother's life could be in danger. You and your husband need to discuss this carefully." Hearing such despairing words, we couldn't even savor the joy of having children, and William and I felt like we were in mourning. My parents were surprisingly positive, saying, "Twins are amazing." But my in-laws and Elizabeth were strongly opposed. "There's no way you can have twins with your health. Just give up this time," they shouted, and I held back my tears as I went home. William, too, was swayed by the doctor's words about my life being at risk and was on the verge of giving up on the pregnancy. But I couldn't give up. I couldn't imagine abandoning the children who came to us just to save myself. Prepared to be hated for life, I defied my in-laws and persuaded William to continue with the twin pregnancy. As expected, my body couldn't handle the strain, and at 5 months, I was hospitalized until delivery. During my stay, neither my parents nor in-laws visited, only William came every weekend. He brought snacks and books I liked and chatted about trivial things. Though the hospital stay was tough and anxiety-inducing, I managed because he was on my side. And then, as soon as I reached full term, I had a cesarean section. 2 tiny but healthy baby girls were born. Holding those small bodies with William, tears of happiness and relief flowed. But childbirth wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The horror of raising twins began here. Born a bit earlier than the due date, Susan and Karen slept well for the first 2 weeks. But after that, they cried incessantly, be it early morning or the middle of the night. While I nursed one, the other would cry, and while changing one's diaper, the other would have an explosive diaper. The hectic pace and the tension of having small lives in my hands drove me into a nervous breakdown. William was supportive, but he could only help during weekends or nights as his company didn't have paternity leave. After exhausting workdays, he would soothe the twins, developing dark circles under his eyes. I couldn't bring myself to ask for more help. I couldn't rely on my parents either. When we found out at 7 months that the twins were girls, my parents openly grimaced and said, "How could you, a first wife, have 2 girls? You owe it to the in-laws to produce a boy. Get them out and try for a son." Such heartless words left me in shock. I never imagined that my parents, who were happy about the twin pregnancy, would turn on me. Especially because of their gender. Staring blankly in disbelief, my mother, Patricia, gently scolded me. "You know, when I had you, your mother-in-law gave me a hard time too." Grandma? My paternal grandmother passed away when I was 1, so I have no memory of her. Did my mother endure such criticism to have me? Then why did you have me? "Well, we planned to have a second child soon after. Though it didn't happen, and your mother-in-law passed away quickly, so it wasn't an issue." I see. Don't misunderstand. I'm advising you out of concern. Your mother-in-law seems long-lived. If you want her favor, get pregnant again soon. They will never accept twin girls. My parents' seemingly absurd confession turned out to be their true feelings. Since they deemed the twin girls insignificant, they visited briefly the day after their birth and hadn't contacted me since. There was no way I could ask my parents for help, saying, "Raising twins is tough, please help me." And as Patricia said, if the in-laws hated my twin daughters, I couldn't rely on them either. They had opposed the twin pregnancy from the start. Since discovering the twins were girls, William was the only person I could trust. With nowhere to turn and sleepless nights continuing, both William and I grew more and more worn out. One morning, right after William left for work, the intercom rang. Thinking William had forgotten something, I opened the door, only to find 2 unexpected visitors. "Looking gloomy so early in the morning. You're making us feel miserable too. Mother? Elizabeth?" Standing there in the sparkling morning sunlight, with frowns on their faces, were my mother-in-law Mary and sister-in-law Elizabeth. Before I could say anything in surprise, they pushed past me into the house. What's going on? What do you think? We're here because you haven't brought the grandchildren over. Wait, what? Mary's strong tone made the blood drain from my face. I'm sorry. I was so busy with the kids, I didn't have time. Yes. Exactly. What? Elizabeth's loud voice made me yelp. Mary looked around the room and kitchen, sighing. The room's a mess, and the fridge is empty. I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? Sorry. Seeing me in a panic, Elizabeth sighed. Where are the babies? Before I could answer, the newborn's cries echoed from the bedroom. Elizabeth gently picked up the twins, then tossed me into the bedroom, saying, Useless wife, just stay in there, and shut the door. I sat there in the empty bedroom, speechless. What should I do? Too tired to think straight, I couldn't decide whether to get the babies back or stay put. As my mind spun, the babies' cries stopped, and the room fell silent. In the rare quiet and empty space, I fell asleep as if I had fainted. I woke up to the light streaming through the west-facing window. Looking around the bedroom with a foggy mind, I noticed the empty cribs and my heart jumped. Rushing to open the door, I found Elizabeth feeding the twins and Mary chopping vegetables in the kitchen. Mary looked at me with a dissatisfied expression. You slept well. I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing? That's a good thing. Huh? Wash your face and sit down. I made some food. Okay. Following Mary's orders, I quickly got ready and sat at the dining table. Mary promptly served steaming beef stew, miso soup, white rice, and side dishes. Some of the ingredients were things that hadn't been in our fridge. Drawn in, I took a bite of potato. The warm, nostalgic taste spread through my body. Delicious. Good. Mary's brusque words were accompanied by a faintly pleased look. Elizabeth watched the twins with a gentle expression. I gave them the milk that was there. Thank you. Breastfeeding is good, but getting them used to formula is handy. This way, you can let others help. Right. Elizabeth glared at my vague response. So, when things are tough, you need to rely on us. Understand? Sorry. Stop apologizing. As I shrank back, feeling guilty, Elizabeth sighed. Sorry. It's our harsh words that are the problem. What? Elizabeth scratched her head, and Mary frowned. At that moment, William came home. He was surprised to see Mary and Elizabeth, but quickly realized things weren't bad and relaxed. Linda, sorry for surprising you. Mom and Elizabeth were so worried we might collapse, they couldn't stand it anymore. What? I was wide-eyed at William's revelation. Mary and Elizabeth averted their eyes awkwardly. It seemed they had been worried about me since I got pregnant with the twins. They opposed the pregnancy out of concern for my life. They were terrified at the idea of tiny me giving birth to twins. They hadn't visited me in the hospital to avoid raising my blood pressure with their stress. They knew their words could be harsh and intimidating. But the snacks and items William brought to cheer me on were chosen with great care by Mary and Elizabeth. In hindsight, there were many stylish snacks that he wouldn't have picked. During my pregnancy, they frequently visited a famous shrine for safe deliveries. When the twins were safely born, they were overjoyed, but felt too guilty to visit right away. Still, hearing the exhaustion in William's voice during his updates, they sensed our crisis and rushed over. Mary and Elizabeth were just clumsy but kind-hearted people. Unbeknownst to me, they had been loving and protecting me all along. I was too overwhelmed during the pregnancy to notice. Will you really accept these children? Even though I couldn't give you a son. A son? Boy or girl, as long as they're healthy, it's fine. I'm a woman, and so are you. Elizabeth dismissed the anxiety I'd carried alone with a single sentence. More importantly, Linda, I need to ask you something. Mom hasn't held the babies yet. What? Wait, Elizabeth. She thinks she doesn't deserve to hold them because she told you to give up on their lives. Mom. William looked at Mary with sadness. Mary frowned and looked down. Seeing her like that made my eyes well up. Mary regretted it much more deeply than I had realized. She regretted telling me to give up on the twins. She had only said it to protect my life. I stood up and took a baby from Elizabeth. Please, Mary, hold her. But, please. As I bowed my head, Mary reached out hesitantly. Her large hands trembled as they cradled the tiny body. So warm. Yes. Alive. Yes. I'm sorry, so sorry. Mary held the baby's tiny hand. Thank you for being born. Mary's trembling voice brought tears to my eyes. I regretted it. I regretted assuming they had rejected us and distancing myself. It almost led to losing so much. I realized that for my sake, my children's sake, and the sake of the kind people who cared about me, it was important to rely on others. After that, I gradually began to rely on my in-laws. When my father-in-law James held the daughters for the first time, he cried while apologizing. Everyone was genuinely concerned about my health. There was no one here who blamed me for having daughters. Elizabeth, who already had 2 boys, became a great mentor and advisor. My parents-in-law were doting on the girls, spoiling them with gifts. Despite their sharp tongues, Mary and Elizabeth were just tough women working in male-dominated fields. Seeing their cold demeanor and scolding as endearing quirks, I even found them lovable. They would still shoo me out of the kitchen at the in-laws' home, but I realized it was out of concern for my safety. You're cute like a little mouse, but we're afraid we might step on them. When they said that, I felt a mix of emotions. When the twins were 6 months old. Raising twins was still challenging, but thanks to my in-laws' help, I started to feel a bit more relaxed and decided to celebrate the twins' half-birthday. Of course, I invited my in-laws, but Mary kindly suggested, "Why don't you invite your parents too?" So I decided to invite my parents as well. Though hesitant to see my parents, I didn't want to waste my in-laws' kindness and still hoped to trust my parents. I thought maybe I had misinterpreted my parents' harsh words. But I was wrong. On the day of the celebration, Mary and Elizabeth catered the meal and gifted matching outfits for the girls. James was enchanted, holding the girls alternately. But my parents arrived empty-handed, devoured the food, and showed no interest in holding the babies. Near the end of the party, my dad Michael dropped a bombshell. So, when are you planning the next pregnancy? What? The room froze. Confused, I desperately tried to smooth things over. Dad, you see, we're still overwhelmed with the girls. Besides, getting pregnant within a year of giving birth is really hard on the body. But it's not impossible, right? You'll be 40 soon if you keep dawdling. You need to have a boy quickly for William and fulfill your duty as a wife. William frowned at Michael's comment. I'm fine with either boys or girls. Oh, come on. You run a company, you can't mean that. Despite William's serious denial, Michael laughed crudely, thinking he was being modest. Right? My mother Patricia nodded in agreement. Oh, I knew it. My parents really do look down on me for not having a boy. William supported my shoulders as I stood there, pale and frozen. Father-in-law, Linda endured a difficult pregnancy and risked her life to give us these precious daughters. Neither I nor my parents could ask for more. William. Tears welled up as I looked at William's determined profile. But my parents smirked eerily at William. William, a man needs to be more ambitious. Your sister might take over everything. What? She has 2 sons, doesn't she? If you want to inherit the company and the estate, you need to think about the future. Not only William and I, but also my in-laws and Elizabeth turned pale. Finally, I understood. My parents' obsession with having a boy wasn't about protecting me from mistreatment at the in-laws' home. They wanted William to inherit the in-laws' company and the children I bore. My parents wanted their grandchildren to inherit that. They were likely hoping to benefit from me being the CEO's wife and their grandchild becoming the heir. Maybe they had even supported my marriage to William because his family were business owners. I felt my hands growing colder from the shock. Michael's outrageous suggestion left everyone speechless, and he went further. If the twins are a burden, there's a guy who'd be perfect. One of my subordinates is looking to adopt because his wife is infertile. What? Mary and Elizabeth, who had been silent until now, glared at Michael. Give Susan and Karen up for adoption? Mary's voice came from the depths of the earth. Yes. You wanted a boy, right? Sorry for our useless daughter. Once we get rid of the twins, we'll have her give birth to a healthy boy immediately. We don't need that. Right, you don't need what? We're fine, thank you. Michael, who had been sure of their agreement, was stunned. He finally noticed the furious faces of my in-laws and Elizabeth and flinched. How dare you suggest abandoning the babies in front of them and their parents? You are despicable. Mary spat out her words with undisguised disgust. But, the eldest son not having a male heir is a problem for you. It's not a problem at all. As long as my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren are healthy and happy, gender doesn't matter. But... silence! Yikes! The force of Mary's command made my parents shrink like frogs. James, standing at over 6 feet tall, looked down at my petite parents with cold eyes. Today is a day to celebrate our grandchildren reaching 6 months, not a place for you to spout your desires. If you have no shame or decency, then leave. What? Linda! My mom looked at me pleadingly. Did she really think I would support them in trying to give away my precious daughters? No way. Shaking with shock and anger, I fought to keep my voice steady. Leave! We will never give up our daughters. Linda, we're just worried about your position. Get out! Now! Yikes! Elizabeth raised the knife she had brought to cut the cake, her face filled with fury. My parents scrambled out of the house, practically crawling in fear. In the silence that followed, only Susan's cooing broke the tension. I'm so sorry for my parents' rudeness, I said, bowing to Mary and Elizabeth. There was so much I needed to say, but I couldn't find the words. Mary's large hand enveloped my cold one. Linda, we are just grateful the girls were born healthy and that you are safe. We are so thankful that you brought 2 beautiful grandchildren into the world. Mary. If you want more children, of course we will support you, but we don't want you to risk your health. Take care of yourself for the sake of your daughters. Do you understand our feelings? Yes. Tears welled up in my eyes at Mary's warm words and touch. I was still in shock and angry at my parents. But more than that, I was overjoyed by the support and love from these wonderful people. Now that the troublemakers are gone, let's start over. Cake for the adults and strawberries for the children. Elizabeth placed a large piece of cake in front of me. It was at least twice the size of William's slice. That's blatant favoritism. Of course. Linda is doing an amazing job with her first-time parenting. And since I'm raising a difficult 3-year-old, I deserve this big piece too. Hey, now. William chuckled as Elizabeth placed another big slice in front of herself. With the usual atmosphere restored, I felt a wave of relief. No matter what my parents said, I had people who would stand by me. I vowed to protect my daughters from my parents' harmful influence. As I watched Susan and Karen happily eat strawberries in William and James's arms, I made a silent promise. A week after my parents' outburst, we had a new incident. One peaceful afternoon. While spending time with William and the kids, the doorbell rang. On the monitor were unfamiliar faces. Suspicious, I opened the door, and the couple smiled as they explained their visit. We heard from the supervisor that you were giving away your twin babies. What? As William and I stared in shock, they froze as well. Hearing their story, I felt a sudden, intense anger. The supervisor they mentioned was my father, Michael. They were the couple Michael had mentioned, looking to adopt. Michael had moved forward with plans to give my children away without my consent. Struggling to contain my anger, I explained the situation calmly. The couple was appalled by his actions. Apparently, Michael had tearfully told them, "My daughter is too weak to raise twins. For her health, please take the babies." In reality, he demanded I have a boy right after giving birth to twins. I spat. The couple's faces turned cold. Thankfully, they were reasonable and, though disappointed, they offered me kind words and left. As soon as they were gone, I explained everything to William, who had been watching the kids in the living room. His face turned terrifyingly furious. Unforgivable. I couldn't believe these were my real parents. I wanted to storm into my parents' home and unleash my fury, but I held back. There were more important things to do. I confirmed something with William. A week after Michael's subordinate had visited, my parents barged in, shouting, "Why did you turn my subordinate away?" "What do you mean, why?" "I told you we're not giving up the twins. I was thinking of your position, and you treat your father like this?" "My position? Are you insane?" Though I had thought many harsh words, I hadn't acted on them yet. But Michael, his face red with anger, started ranting. Apparently, the subordinate who had been misled by Michael exposed Michael's misdeeds to everyone. The people around were, of course, disappointed, especially those with children. They reported it to the company president, who adored his grandchildren so much he had their photos on his smartphone. The president was so furious his hair stood on end. He summoned Michael for a half-day lecture, and even that wasn't enough, he also made snide remarks during the morning assembly. In the small town and small company, Michael's wrongdoing quickly became known to all employees. The stories of his misdeeds spread to the families of employees and neighbors, who whispered that my parents were devils who sacrificed their granddaughters to get a grandson. "I was worried about your situation if you didn't have a son, and this is how you repay me? You're still talking about that?" Father-in-law and mother-in-law said they're fine without a boy. "You don't understand the world. To secure our family's future, we need a boy to take over after William." Patricia bit her nails. If they really cared about their daughter, they would value life over money and social status. But explaining such rationality wouldn't resonate with these people blinded by greed. Instead, I told them the truth that would hit them the hardest. "Well, I'll tell you that William is not going to inherit the in-laws company." "What?" "The successor of that company is Elizabeth." "What?" My parents were shocked by my revelation. "That can't be true. There's no way father-in-law would allow a woman to take over. Whether he allows it or not, the company belongs to her. What? At William's words, my parents practically collapsed in shock. Yes, the president of the in-laws company is Mary, not James. If they had checked the company's website, they would have seen Mary listed as the representative, but they never noticed because of their assumptions. Elizabeth has been studying to take over the company while working there. William works in a completely different industry. I confirmed with him that he had no interest in the in-laws business and wanted to continue his current career. So, I will never be the company president's wife, forever. No! No! My parents' faces turned from blue to pale white. Patricia covered her face with her hands, lamenting. I boasted to all our relatives that you were going to be a company president's wife. What do we do now? I don't care. Portia! Portia? Michael gasped. I thought you'd be wealthy, so we didn't save for retirement. I bought the Porsche I've always dreamed of. And I just ordered a kitchen renovation. These are my parents. You'll have to work hard and save up again. No! No! As my parents trembled in despair, William gently grabbed their collars and escorted them out. Thus, my parents, at 56, were forced to start saving for their retirement all over again. Despite everything, the cruel actions Michael took against me and my daughters continued to haunt him, and unable to withstand the cold pressure from those around him, he fled from his job. He hadn't prepared for early retirement and had actually spent the savings he expected to inherit from me, and even had loans. My mom had been a housewife for the 36 years since I was born. Their current lifestyle was on the brink of collapse, making retirement out of the question. They looked for new jobs, but were not hired anywhere. They even called me in tears, begging me to ask my mother-in-law to hire them, but I cut them off with a single sentence: we don't need outdated people who look down on women. I was sometimes depressed by how pathetic my parents had become, but William and my in-laws cheered me up by buying my favorite sweets and foods. My new family, who accepted me, was so warm and kind. The twins grew steadily, spreading their adorable smiles. Every time I felt proud of myself for protecting these lives, my heart grew stronger. Even with parents like that, I knew I would be okay in this warm, soft place. I was certain of it. 6 months later. Dad did. Did you hear that? Susan just called me Daddy, right? No, she said Grandpa. Isn't that right, Susan? All right, Susan must be hungry. Look, Mommy made delicious food for you. Why? Did she just say Granny? All right. My in-laws and William were excited, while Elizabeth, who was seriously decorating, responded with a nonchalant nod. Those once intimidating in-laws now showed nothing but sweetness towards their grandchildren. Today was the twins' first birthday. With Elizabeth's family also here, it was very lively. I made a yogurt cake that even the babies could eat, using recipes I had gathered online. I spread strained yogurt on pancakes, decorated them with finger biscuits, strawberries, and a one candle. You're lucky to have such a beautiful cake made for you, Elizabeth said, poking Karen's cheek, making her laugh. Susan was reaching out from William's arms, eager to grab the cake. I felt deeply moved and happy to be part of this incredibly joyful scene. I might want another baby in the future, and it might be a boy. But I knew that William and my in-laws would love my children wholeheartedly, regardless of gender. Meeting a family I could believe in made me confident that my life would continue to be wonderful. I don't want to take care of you, so live here. With those words, I felt the door close behind me. I heard the sound of the lock turning, and a bad feeling made me panic. Steve? Hey, you're there, right? Steve? Though I called out in anxiety, there was no response. In the silent space, my panic only grew. Steve? Please, answer me. Already uneasy in the unfamiliar wheelchair, I mishandled it and tumbled out of it. Ouch! Why? How could this happen? I had to voice it out or the anxiety would crush me. Where am I, exactly? Am I just going to die here alone? Right when tears of frustration and sadness wouldn't stop. Cindy! With the sound of the door opening, I was enveloped in warmth. 3 days later, a TV show was featuring a certain store. Listening to show. Hey! Explain yourself. The door burst open, and the voice of the person I hated most in the world resounded. I am Cindy, a 32-year-old who works hard every day at a major company. Since I was young, I had a dream. Captivated by it on TV as a child, I became obsessed. Since then, I've studied hard to achieve that dream, and now I'm working hard every day to save up. Working hard is good, but don't overdo it, okay? Thanks. But working towards my dream is really fun. I guess so. I love seeing you so happy, too. That was what my husband, Steve, said to me, smitten by my dedication. He was a colleague at my company. Enamored by my hard work, Steve supported my dream after hearing about it. His persistence won me over, and we started dating. After a few years together, we got married. Both of us working at major companies meant that even allocating part of my salary to my dream savings didn't impact our lifestyle. I also had companions chasing my dream with me as well. Cindy, how's it going on your end? Going well. How about you, Mindy? Of course. Just a little more to reach our goal. My best friend, Mindy. I met Mindy in high school. Hey, don't you think our names sound similar? Do they? Yeah, the spelling's different, but they sound alike. The similarity in the pronunciation of our names was what sparked our friendship, and discovering we shared the same dream quickly solidified it. Since then, we've been supporting each other in our efforts to realize our dream someday. Before I knew it, my dream had become our dream. My monthly highlights. It's checking the bank account for my dream savings. The more the money accumulates, the closer we get to our dream, and it excites me. But one day, as I checked it, I froze. Somehow, about $5,000 had been withdrawn from the dream savings. Only 2 people knew about this bank account. Steve and Mindy. Of them, only Steve knew where the debit card was. I went straight home and confronted Steve, who was relaxing. Hey! Did you withdraw from my dream savings without asking? Just borrowed it. Borrowed? You know how hard I've been saving for this, right? Shut up. I'll pay it back eventually. Steve's unapologetic attitude nearly made my head explode with anger. Besides, isn't it ridiculous for a woman over 30 to chase dreams? What? Lately, Steve has been mocking my dream like this. Bringing up my age, saying if I have time to chase dreams, I should contribute to making myself look younger. Steve, you used to support me. And it doesn't give you the right to use my money however you want. Money is shared between husband and wife, so it should be fine. That account has money I saved since before we were married. Where did you put my debit card? I somehow managed to get the debit card back from Steve. Now, I have to hide this debit card somewhere it can't be found. Stop nagging! With that much in there, it's fine to use a little. Steve's muttering filled my head with rage. I pay for all the living expenses and rent. I don't want to hear complaints from someone who doesn't contribute a penny. There's a big difference in salary between me and Steve. I'm older and started working earlier, but even so, I've managed to keep my performance top-notch. Conversely, Steve's performance has been declining. That's because you were the one who taught me the job. I was your mentor years ago. Whose fault is it for not growing since then? You can't sell youth, so as an older woman, you have to work hard to earn. Lately, we've been fighting like this all the time. Years ago, Steve used to encourage me, saying to keep going. Maybe it started when I turned 30. Around then, he began calling me an old lady and frequently brought up my age. If I tried to argue back, Steve would sulk and ignore me for a while, so I always ended up apologizing to keep the peace. But this time, I didn't feel like apologizing. After a big fight with Steve, I called Mindy. "I'm sorry, Mindy. We promised to save together." "It's Steve's fault. Don't worry about it, Cindy." Mindy forgave me with a laugh, and I apologized again, feeling both grateful and sorry. We were so close to our goal, but now it feels further away because of Steve. I couldn't help but sigh, and it must have been audible over the phone. I could hear Mindy laughing. "You know, happiness will run away, you know? Cindy, unlike me, you're married. A little trouble is inevitable. $5,000 is not a little trouble. It was a good decision to have a separate bank account for our savings with Mindy." "Really? We'll have to be more careful with Steve from now on." "Exactly." Then we moved on to more trivial conversations. At that time, I never imagined such a thing could happen, and I believed our friendship would never break. One day, I was on my way to a sales appointment as usual. While crossing the street and reviewing the contract details in my head, a car ran a red light and headed straight for me. Distracted by my thoughts, I noticed the car too late and felt my body being thrown by the strong impact. I could hear the noise of the surrounding commotion and the car driving away. Unable to move due to pain, I listened and then lost consciousness. "Cindy! Cindy!
Mindy.
Cindy! Are you awake? Wait, I'll call the doctor now." Mindy's voice, sounding close to tears, brought me back to consciousness. I tried to open my eyes, but it was pitch dark, I couldn't see anything. I vaguely sensed Mindy bustling around. Not understanding what had happened, and unable to move my legs, I was filled with anxiety. Then, the doctor called by Mindy explained the situation to me. "I know it's a shock, but please try to stay calm. Your eyes were damaged in the accident." In short, the accident left me blind and paralyzed from the waist down. I would never be able to see again, and I was facing a lifetime in a wheelchair. "Why me? I was so close." I was plunged into the depths of despair. Now, I couldn't even chase the dream I had been so intent on pursuing. As I wallowed in sadness, Mindy stayed by my side. "Cindy, I won't give up. I'll work hard for both of us. I'll make our dream come true and give it to you as a gift. So don't give up." Honestly, I thought about just disappearing, but Mindy kept encouraging me, and I somehow managed to reconsider. Steve, hearing that I had regained consciousness, rushed over and stayed by my side throughout my hospitalization, since I couldn't see anything. He listened to my anxieties, helping me distract myself a little. I was truly grateful to both of them. But that was only at first. Mindy stopped visiting me. In my current state, I couldn't even contact Mindy. What pushed me further down was Steve's attitude. At first, Steve, who had been considerate and talked about various things, gradually spoke less and visited less often. Even when he came to the hospital room, he seemed to be busy with his mobile phone, and all I could hear was the tapping.
Steve, how's work lately?"
"It's none of your business." He would respond indifferently to any attempt at conversation. That attitude hurt me deeply, and what troubled me most was Mindy's absence. In fact, as a secure place Steve could never access, I had entrusted Mindy with the debit card for our dream savings account. I didn't want to believe it, but had Mindy stopped coming because she got hold of that debit card? And Steve, did he truly not care about me at all? These thoughts made me increasingly despondent. I spent my days in the hospital room, crying alone. As my hospital stay went on, the thought of going home filled me with anxiety. However, "It's okay. I'm here for you." Hearing Steve speak kindly again, I chose to be discharged. Then, as we drove, I noticed something was off. The hospital and our home were only a few minutes apart by car. But the trip was clearly taking too long.
"Steve, where are we going?"
"There's a place I want to stop by first." I wanted to go straight home, and venturing out without my sight was daunting. Sensing my reluctance, Steve spoke in a gentle voice. "The place we're going is made to be enjoyable even without sight. I thought it would be a nice distraction. It's related to your dream. My dream?
The first thing that came to mind was Mindy. She had said she would work hard for both of us to make our dream come true and give it to me as a gift. I'm sorry to say this, Cindy, but Mindy betrayed you.
What? Mindy? How?
I asked back, my voice trembling. I found out that Mindy disappeared after getting hold of your debit card. I've been searching to get it back, but it's been difficult. That's why I've been distant in the hospital room. I'm really sorry. According to Steve, his curt behavior was because he was searching for Mindy without telling me. His fiddling with the mobile phone was him reaching out to acquaintances for any sightings. At that moment, I was too shocked to believe Mindy could betray us, and my mind went blank. I didn't notice the odd feeling I would have caught under normal circumstances.
But we finally found her. Let's go together and get back at her. Okay.
And I nodded in agreement. After a while, Steve's car continued towards an unknown destination. Could it be okay to come this far? As I was consumed by anxiety.
We're here.
The car stopped. With Steve's help, I got out of the car and felt being pushed in a wheelchair into some indoor space.
Hey, Steve, where is this? It feels like there's no one around. Of course, it's an unused vacant house.
Steve's presence and voice faded away. I tried to reach out for Steve, but couldn't grasp anything. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by fear.
Steve? Where are you?
Behind me, I heard Steve's laughter.
I don't want to take care of you, so live here.
With those words, I felt the door close behind me. Then, I heard the sound of the lock turning. A bad feeling made me panic.
Steve, hey, you're there, right? Steve!
Though I called out in anxiety, there was no response. In the silent space, my panic only grew.
Steve, please respond.
Already uneasy in the unfamiliar wheelchair, I mishandled it and tumbled out of it.
Ouch! Why, how could this?
I had to voice it out or the anxiety would crush me. Where am I, exactly? Would I just die here, alone and unaided? Right when tears of frustration and sadness wouldn't stop.
Cindy!
With the sound of the door opening, I was enveloped in warmth.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Cindy.
Mindy? Is that you? I could feel the arms hugging me trembling, and my right shoulder getting slightly wet. Mindy was hugging me and crying. Why was she here? What was happening?
It's okay now.
My questions were drowned out by Mindy's firm voice. And I was taken into Mindy's care. 3 days later, a feature on a certain store could be heard from the TV she had turned on. Listening to it.
Hey! Explain yourself.
The door burst open, and the voice of the person I hated most in the world resounded.
Well, look who decided to show their face.
Cindy, are you okay?
Yes, of course. I have something I want to say, too.
From his voice, Steve seemed to be quite panicked. Mindy and I were there to meet him.
Why are you still alive? Because I saved her, obviously.
That day, Mindy had arrived at the vacant house ahead of time and waited nearby, hidden, for us to arrive. After confirming Steve had left, she rescued me.
Don't mess with me. You said you betrayed Cindy. Indeed, I did betray someone. But not Cindy. The one I betrayed was you, Steve.
It turned out, right after the accident, Steve had approached Mindy, trying to start a relationship with her. Despite showing concern for me, he had made advances towards Mindy, causing her to distrust him.
He was after the debit card for your dream savings that I was holding on to. And, as it turns out, he was after my savings too.
Realizing Steve's scheme, Mindy thought it would be easy to refuse him on the spot, but doing so might have endangered me. Mindy pretended to go along with Steve's plan, acting as if she had betrayed me.
What's that supposed to mean?
Steve, apparently never suspecting he was being deceived, froze. Mindy had gained his trust by handing over an empty bank account's debit card to Steve after moving her savings to another account. She skillfully prevented Steve from checking the account, a maneuver that made me admire Mindy even more. While Steve was off guard, she bought the vacant house where he left me. If we leave her in that vacant house, she'll never be found. That way, everyone will think she just disappeared, unable to accept her reality. That was how she persuaded Steve. As a result, Steve, without any suspicion, left me in the vacant house and Mindy safely retrieved me.
It's good you're simple-minded. Thanks to that, we could establish our dream, the old folkhouse cafe.
Yes, our dream was to run an old folkhouse cafe. Mindy had renovated the purchased vacant house and it had just opened yesterday. Until a moment ago, it was being featured live on TV. The broadcast that had been on TV was from that time. Steve must have seen the live broadcast and rushed over.
No way, it can't be. Me, deceived? Excuse me.
As Steve was in turmoil, a group seemed to enter the cafe. Mindy whispered to me that it was the police. Apparently called by her.
We need to talk. I didn't do anything. Take this as evidence, please. Thank you for your cooperation.
Then, I could hear Steve being loudly taken away by the police. I thought I heard him calling for my help, but I ignored it.
He's gone.
Yes. The cafe became quiet once Steve was gone.
Cindy, what's wrong?
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but start crying. We had finally managed to open the old folkhouse cafe of our dreams. We had worked so hard to create a space where everyone could relax. Yet, in this condition, I would only drag Mindy down, not just with management but in every aspect. While it might be a novelty now and attract customers, there's no guarantee they will keep coming. Thinking about it, I couldn't stop my tears.
There's still hope. Maybe you can still see.
I had undergone eye surgery at the time of the accident. Because of that, I was currently wearing an eye patch. However, I was told there was a high likelihood of being blind, or at the very least, having significantly reduced vision. Between my lower body being immobile, the suspicion of Mindy's betrayal, and Steve's behavior, I was mentally too frail to remove the eye patch and had been too scared to take it off. Because of that, I had convinced myself I was blind.
I fulfilled the promise and made our dream come true. So, let's go to the hospital together.
I nodded to Mindy's words. Then, on a day off, Mindy took me to the hospital. There, when the eye patch was removed, I could capture light.
With glasses or such, we can adjust this.
Mindy rejoiced as if it were her own victory. I couldn't see her face, but it made me think maybe I could try a little harder. After that, I divorced Steve. Thanks to Mindy's thorough investigation, the reason for Steve's tyrannical behavior was uncovered. He had been cheating on me with a younger colleague, who was also the very person who had hit me with her car. Both of them were arrested for their respective crimes and ordered to pay me a large sum in compensation.
How dare he make my best friend suffer? I'll never forgive you. Mindy, calm down. There's nothing but hell waiting for him now. No need for you to intervene.
During a TV interview, I accidentally let slip the reason I ended up in this state, including the part about being abandoned by Steve. Naturally, Steve was fired. After his release, nothing but miserable days awaited him. On my part, things were looking up. The compensation allowed me to buy good glasses. With my vision partially restored, my motivation soared. I'm still in a wheelchair, but what I can do has significantly increased. All the handicrafts in our shop are made by me, and I keep adding to them even as I handle the administrative work. The handicrafts have been well received by customers, contributing to the shop's profits. Just when I had almost forgotten about Steve's existence, as the shop was thriving. Cindy, I'm truly sorry. Steve showed up at the shop before opening time. He came to apologize deeply, but we ignored him and continued with our opening preparations.
Hey, you. Me? Aren't you the guy who abandoned his wife? What do you want now? Aren't you ashamed to show your face here?
A customer glared at Steve, who then left. I smiled in gratitude to the customer who had chased him away.
Thank you, Chester.
Not at all, glad I came early. He's a regular at the shop and was the cameraman when the TV crew came. Since the broadcast, he's continued to visit as a customer.
Today, I'll also be making drinks. Please do order some. Really? I'm looking forward to it. You two are so transparent.
Mindy chuckled, sensing something. I was genuinely grateful I decided to go through with the interview that day.
Now, we need to make sure he never shows up here again.
I know a good lawyer.
Thank you. Please, I'd appreciate that.
There's no time to waste on such a man anymore. I need to keep working hard for the customers who visit us. I quickly forgot about Steve and immersed myself in work. Watched over kindly by both of them. Sometime later.
Is there something good happening? You seem very happy.
Yes, actually, I received a letter the other day. The letter mentioned that there are people who are encouraged by seeing me work. That made me so happy, I couldn't help but beam.
When you smile like that, you're truly beautiful. I like you, Cindy, just the way you are. If it's okay with you, I'd like to date you.
I was taken aback by his confession. To be honest, I was attracted to him too, so I was happy. But there was my condition to consider. After I explained my situation, he said he didn't mind. However, I wanted some time to think it over, so we left it at that for the moment.
I just want you to be happy.
That's easy to say, but...
Just make sure you won't have any regrets.
Yes, thank you. Things have been going very well for me. In stark contrast, Steve ended up in debt. He managed to find a job, but it was low-paying and he was overworked, unlike before. Moreover, it seems he's being hounded by the family of his affair partner. I wondered why the family would do that, but...
You got our daughter involved. You need to take responsibility,
was their reasoning. Well, I'll just cheer him on from afar. It's his own doing, so I'd be troubled if he relied on me. Thanks to the lawyer working diligently, Steve couldn't reach out to me for help and seems to be suffering quite a bit.
It's his own fault,
Mindy muttered after seeing the results of the investigation. I agreed with her. Later, I remarried Chester. I chose to respond to his feelings, who accepted me for who I am. Mindy blessed our union, but it seems she has found someone good for herself too. Mindy could only afford to buy the vacant house, but with his help, she managed to renovate it into the old folk house cafe. They had been in a mutual but unspoken love for a while, hesitant because of the age difference. Hearing about us pushed them to decide on marriage.
It's thanks to you, Cindy.
It's me who should be thankful. Without you, I would have given up on life long ago. I'm really glad you were there for me. Will you keep supporting me?
Of course. I finally managed to repay you.
I tilted my head at her words.
I was saved by you back in our school days. Really?
Mindy felt isolated during middle school. She took a chance and spoke to me in high school, and we've been close ever since.
You didn't ridicule my dreams and aimed for them with me. That's why I could keep going.
Hearing this, I was on the verge of tears. I decided to cherish this bond moving forward.